Welcome to Mind Your Matter. I'm Jody.
I'm Shannon, and let's get into the conversation.
So recently I was telling you about this story that I witnessed that a woman had gone to one of the Joe Dispenza retreats, and she was sharing she had been through some major chronic conditions, some very severe conditions, and she was going through her process of healing. She was doing the meditation work, and she got to a point where it was like she started to feel good. Like she started to notice that she felt better, And so when she was feeling better, she'd be like, I'm feeling good, but can I trust this? Can I trust that I'm good? Can I trust that I'm healed and all that kind of stuff? And then, a little bit of time would pass and she'd have those other old feelings again in her body that were her previous indicator that something was wrong. Right. And so then when the old feelings would come, she'd be like, oh, see, like maybe I'm not totally healed, maybe this thing or that thing. And she was sharing that story. She walked through a whole process. And of course, she ultimately healed. I believe she was dealing with cancer. She ultimately healed some really major issues in her body. But one of the things that she said that stood out to me, and I was telling you about this, was just that it became so important for her to learn how to dissociate from the feelings or sensations that were coming up in her body that wanted to pull her back into old loops and old ways of thinking, making her doubt if what she was doing was working or was she really experiencing healing or not. And he said something really powerful. And what he shared in all of that was how that when let's say we don't have the ability to dissociate from those familiar feelings and those familiar sensations or ideas or whatever, it gets so easy to get sucked back into that loop of thought and almost like sincerely reactivate all of the old chemicals and things in our body that had led us to the path of healing to begin with, right? And he was actually saying something that stood out to me because he was saying that, the body, the brain specifically, is constantly seeking efficiency. What's the most efficient thing here? Well, efficiency in that scenario is the old way that we've thought, because that rut is already built into the brain. That's the way that I'm going to naturally lean to when this version of me, this body, is not being directed to think a certain way.
Yeah.
So you can have an encounter and have an experience of something profound, but if you don't rehearse it and give your attention to it and bring your focus to it, then it doesn't get built into the superhighway of your brain. And so the brain is going to default to that old rutted path because it's most efficient. And this is the part, you and I have talked about this so much, Shannon. This is the part that people miss in their healing process, is that they don't stay the course on implementing the new thing because it's challenging. Mm-hmm. Because the old thing is so well rehearsed and the body is going to do the efficient thing every time. Your brain is going to move to efficiency every time. So it goes, well, we know this other thing. Yeah. That sounds good. But we know this other thing and it's just more efficient for us to use this highway. So let's just use this well-worn path and we'll run this same thought and we'll run these same chemicals and these same feelings and these same sensations. And then people become discouraged, right? They're in their process. And this is happening to me. Become discouraged because that thing came up in the body. You felt that pain or you felt that feeling of imbalance or whatever it was. You're having those symptoms again. But what's really going on is that it's a moment where it's like, oh, I've got to get back on the new highway that I'm building and run that track again and get that path memorized over and over and over again in my body so that my brain will start realizing that's the most efficient path.
Yep.
And you and I were talking about this because there's a conversation that we wanted to have around, well, using the terminology like dissociating from your sensations. Like, oh my God, talk about opening up a can of worms, especially in this climate of people constantly being like somatics and feel and sense and, all this stuff and like bringing your nervous system back online because you've been dissociated. And so I think it's just a worthy conversation to have.
Yeah. Well, it's just, to me, it always takes me back to whenever somebody would say like, oh, you have to feel it to heal it. Okay, cool. What are we talking about? Right? Because if we're talking about a legitimate emotion, this is where the difference between feelings and emotions comes in, right? Because like everyone wants to confuse those and use them interchangeably, and they're not. Emotions are strong and they're short. It's fast. Something happens, and it's usually, I think that what they say is like 90 seconds or less for a genuine emotion, right? If like you're shocked. I mean, how long are you standing there shocked? You know what I mean? It's not like 30 minutes and I'm still like, oh, no, like that's not real life, or anger. It's like legitimate anger. That's going to fade pretty quickly as an emotion. Now, the feeling or the sensation can stay around, but that is always tied to, well, it's usually tied to a previous experience or a story, right? And so what we can I can get on board with the feel it to heal it if what you're talking about is an emotion, right? If what we're talking about is an in this moment, this thing happened, and I'm going to decide in this moment what this thing means. That's fine. To me, that's a workable process. So you can process what your way through that, and that's fine. But to me, if we're talking about these old stories and these old sensations, these old feelings that are coming up, there is no feel that to heal that. Because the longer you let yourself sit in that old feeling, the more exactly what you said, you're just etching it further, like, you know what I mean? Further into, you're making a bigger groove with it. You're expanding the super highway that already exists in your brain with that particular pattern. So that concept of like, oh, I'm just gonna feel this. I'm gonna, I think the thing I hear all the time is, well, what's coming up for me is, and then we want to pay all the attention to this thing that's coming up for you, right? Like, I want to put all my focus and all my energy on this thing that's coming up for me. But what's really coming up for you? Because it's not an emotion, it's an old sensation based on old experience, probably something faulty, probably something that you told yourself a flimsy story about that is now running the show. Like it doesn't, and I get it, like we do, we live in the somatic, we live in the age of feeling everything, and this is how you walk through this process. And then, but I don't know, I think the research, especially Dr. Joe's research about chemicalization and your body doing really specific routine, like you said, efficient things, that's going to be the go-to. So to me, unless you can learn how to differentiate between the two, if you keep riding the wave of feelings and sensations, you are not getting off that roller coaster.
No, you really will never, because that it has become your baseline. It has become the way that I hate to say it this way, but it's like the way you're still functioning in the world. Oh, this thing is reminding me that I'm present, I'm here, I'm still alive. I heard somebody going through something a while back, and it was quite uncomfortable, and they said at one point, like, the pain lets me know that I'm alive. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't need that, right? Like, we don't need pain to be the reminder that, oh, I'm alive. I remember. But a lot of people rely on it in their life because it's become habitual. The discomfort, the challenge, the struggle, all of that is the reminder I'm still alive. I'm still here. And consciously, they might not say it that way, but definitely on a deeper level, they're used to it. It is part of who they are. And this is what tells me where I belong, who I am, all these things, this is what tells me I'm alive. And so when the girl that I was listening to, when she said, you have to learn how to dissociate from those feelings, from those emotions, I was like, okay, yes, like it is valuable to learn to detach, to dissociate from the old story. Like you have to dissociate from that old story. We're no longer associated. We're no longer linked. We're no longer in partnership. And so it's so easy, and I know this from my own experience, so easy when you're working through something and you're doing something very specific to heal or resolve some kind of challenge, especially physically in your body. And then your body kicks up this pattern of something that's very familiar, and it's a trigger that makes you go, oh my God, what's going on? You start scanning, you start, doing all this internal processing of, is this something I ate? Or, is this because I did this one thing yesterday? Like you start going through the whole process. As soon as you do that, you have again opened up the old highway. Like that's it. You're back on the old highway and you're flying. Like you don't even know. You've gone way past the speed limit, everything. You're just
Scroll is on at 120 and you are lost to the road.
that's it.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, I had to learn, and I told this to you not long ago, is like I had to learn how to ignore things that would happen in my body. Because here's the other part of this, like, especially if you're dealing with something physical, when something comes up and it makes you go, what is that? You're having this thing happen in your body somewhere, you're having the pain, you're having the discomfort. When you immediately start questioning it, it throws your body into a stress response. Mm-hmm. Your body goes, we're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe, because that's what you're doing on the inside. Oh my God, I'm not safe. And your body goes, we're not safe. And so now it has to run all of the programs and the chemicals of this is what happens when I'm not safe. So you're just flying down that highway. The wind's blowing your hair back. Like it's all happening. You're back on it. And so I had to learn how to stop the scanning, stop the reacting when my body would do these certain things. The funny thing was is that as soon as I stopped having a reaction to the reaction in my body, it literally would shut up every time. And I remember telling you that, like, it's almost like it's magic, Shannon. I don't know what this is, but it's like ignoring a screaming child that's throwing a fit on the floor, and you just like let them have their little moment and you don't give all this attention and energy to it. And they just get it out and then it's done. Suddenly they're fine and they're ready to go do the next thing. I said it's literally like that. And then, that thing kind of like going out a little further into our life and learning how to stop reacting to our life.
Yeah.
Like stop reacting to what you're seeing happen in your life. Because your reaction says you believe that what you're seeing is real.
That right there. That right there. Because that's it. Like that's, I think when you say I ignore it, I'm like, I literally will now say, not my reality. Not my reality. Like, and then just know, like, that's not what's happening.
Right.
That's not what's happening because I'm not putting my attention there, and not in a resistant way, like, oh no, not in my real. Just like, no, that doesn't match, so it's not in my reality.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's like we could sit and people have listened to and entertained the ideas and the notions that the world of their senses is not the truth, and they can theorize that in their own life and hold the theoretical what about this and the hypothetical this and all this stuff. But it's like until you actually are faced with it and you start realizing that any place that you're not only putting your attention but you're putting your energy or your emotion into, oh my God, or what do I do about this? Or how do I address this? As soon as you've done it, you have built a bridge between you and that illusory thing and said, I give you my energy so that I can make you real.
You have meaning. Right. I have realized you have meaning.
I'm going to breathe the breath of life into you right now, just like God did in the Garden of Eden. And you're about to come to life. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you can if you'd like, but also there's this whole other possibility.
Yep.
This whole other thing that you can have when you pull your energy back and you bring it back to you and you stop giving it to the world of your senses. You stop giving it to the things that your body wants to kick up to get attention over, to see, like, are we safe? Because here's the reality. I've read enough and experienced enough on my own to know that the body's constantly looking for that safety.
Yes.
Like constantly. So when you go into, oh my God, what is this? That is not safety.
No.
Researching to find out is not safety.
No.
The information labeled over you so that you can know for sure what's going on in your body, that is not bringing your body safety. I don't care what you think. It isn't, because now you're going to have to deal with all of that, everything that comes with that. But when you can actively relax, when the thing happens and be like, I'm good. Everything's fine.
Mhm.
That's safety.
Mhm.
Not reacting to it, not the panic over it, but legitimately just like, I'm good, I'm safe. There's a guy on YouTube. I'm gonna shout him out because he has some good content. Let me see if I can find his account really quick. You have anything else to add on that, Shannon, what I'm saying?
No, just that when we get into that headspace of making things real because they feel real, right? And so I think that I don't want anybody to get confused and that we don't understand what it is to feel something. Like I can get lost in the
Yeah.
sauce
Oh
of
yeah.
my feelings. Like do not misunderstand. Like I can be the queen of, but I just feel like, fill in the blank, right? But I think what I'm really learning and really experiencing for myself is that the more I jump into those feelings and start trying to figure them out and just, okay, but I think I'm feeling this way because when I was 5 and or whatever, right? Whatever the answer that I'm going to come to supposedly is, the more I'm literally cementing that in my reality, the more I'm literally saying, yes, this is what I choose because this is what I'm choosing to focus on. This is where I'm choosing to put my attention and my energy. So this is what I'm making real. As opposed to when I say, not in my reality, or that's not real, or I loved Louise Hay's, no, all is well. Everything's working out for my highest good. Out of this situation, only good will come. I am safe. I don't care how you want to say it, what you want to look at, how you want to dissociate from it. Um, but I think the word dissociate has gotten a really bad rap because what I mean when I say it is just take your attention off that.
Exactly.
Just take your attention off of it. I would much rather put my attention into the things that I'm actively choosing in my life. I'm not choosing that. I don't want to choose to feel like crap. I don't want to choose, whatever the awful thing is. I want to choose wholeness and wellness and vibrance and feeling amazing and all of those things. Let me put my attention on something closer to that.
Right. Yes. The resource that I was thinking of, it's a YouTube channel called Pain Free You. And he's just really practical in the way that he's like, you have to ignore it. Yeah, your body's doing this, you're having this thing come up, and this is what you're going to have to do to work your way through it. It's just very, very practical help. And I've listened to some of his stuff and been like, I can appreciate these thoughts and ideas because it is that thing of like, we're not saying you don't have these feelings. We're not saying that this isn't real. I mean, it's subjective at this point, right? Like, it's just about what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with it? Like you said, it's like, am I going to feed it? Am I going to bolster it? Am I going to anchor it and give it a little guest room in my house to stay in? And then we can, hang out every day. Or am I going to be like, I love what you said, like, not in my reality. Like, nope, not in my reality. Because, like, here's the thing that I think is so important to know. When you are making these shifts, and we're here talking about mind your matter. So, we're really talking about the power of our mind and how it materializes in our world. And so, when people are making these changes and they're using tools to help reprogram themselves, rewire their brains, and all of that, most people abort their mission way too soon.
Yes.
They get an experience and they feel great in this experience. They're like, oh my God, this made me feel so good. And it's like, yeah, okay, so now what is your plan to literally burn that into the grooves of your brain so that your brain knows this is our new normal, right? Like if you're constantly seeking that healing experience, that somatic experience, that session over here or this thing over there, then you're not intending to become new. You're just looking for the next thing that's going to dull the pain.
Yep.
Right? And you're looking for some kind of little easy, like, icy hot or some shit to put on your little thing going on in your life, but it's not.
Band-Aid.
Yeah, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Band-Aid. You're just looking for a band-aid.
Yes, exactly that. And it's the thing I see most people do. They just aren't willing to stay the course, right? Because in this 3D reality, it takes some time to catch up. It doesn't mean that it didn't work. It just means it takes a little bit of time before it completely manifests itself. Do you have the discipline to let that thing come to fruition? When we're, carrying children, we're not in a hurry to get that baby out. We know it needs to stay in for 9 months at least, but we know it's longer than that. So we know it has to be there for at least that long in order for it to thrive once it's born. But in our life, we're like, we needed it 30 seconds ago. And we're over here trying to wave magic wands over things that we've been creating for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So it just takes time. And I watch people abort their mission over and over and over again. It's frustrating because I'm like, you're so close, you're right there, but it's not happening fast enough, or whatever.
Yeah, like, oh, this thing came up, this feeling came up again. I always come back to this place. This thing always happens, whatever, right? And then it's like, yes, pay attention to the story that comes up. Like, notice the story that comes up when you experience those feelings or those sensations, because that's what you've chosen in the past. That's why they're coming up now. And it's coming up now to decide, really, because your personality is like, yeah, that's who I am. Let's hang on to that. And it's in that moment that most people will abort and go back to that old way of thinking. But where if you want to be new, you choose new. And sometimes you keep choosing over and over and over and over and over again until you really start seeing the fruits of that choice
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah. And there's always that. I love this because whenever I've listened to Joe Dispenza's testimonials, when people that have been through his work, when they've gone through it for a while, they'll always say like, oh, there was this one moment where I woke up and I noticed I felt better. Or there was this one day that I got to do this one thing that I hadn't been able to do in a long time. And I knew in that moment, this is working. So there will always be a tell. There will always be a little glimmer that will let you know this is working. Just keep going. Right. And I know that we need that. I know that that's important in our process because as human beings, we are so easily discouraged whenever things don't seem to be moving quickly. But it is necessary for us to stay in that rhythm of this is the new highway I'm building in my brain. And I'm telling my brain, this is the direction we're going now. We're not going to use that old highway anymore. It's got barricades up. We're not going down that road. We're going to go down this new road. And that's really the part that people struggle with so much. You and I just walked through this whole freely receive experience. And that process is created to help people, first of all, literally burn down pathways that have been active and playing over and over and over again in their life and in their brain, in their mind, in their idea of who they are. But it is also to build a new path. It is to build a new pathway into this is who I am. And this is automatic for me. That's what we really want is we want to reprogram ourselves into a patterned existence of my baseline is vitality. My baseline is, prosperity. My baseline is abundance and peace and joy and fulfillment and all the things that we're out here looking for and scrambling for and basically trying to separate ourselves to have when they can only happen in a state of wholeness. So that's what this is all about, and it can't happen if we don't do the work of staying right there in that place of this is the new me. This is the new me. This is new me. And I'm not talking about, people think they're doing this by going to the gym or they think they're doing this by having a new diet. No, this is literally happening at a very fundamental level of who you are. This is information, and it's like activating that information over and over and over again, not just the thoughts, but the feelings of that information, right? Yeah. So I'm not saying feeling doesn't matter, It does matter. But when it comes to, oh, I just feel like this and I feel this way, and it's an old, outdated story that keeps you spinning on a loop of more and more crap in your life, why are you giving your energy to that? Because listen, if feeling it to heal it, here's the thing, in my perspective, if feeling it to heal it really healed it, then I wouldn't feel it again.
Right. I would not keep coming back to it. You
Oh,
wouldn't land, because I've heard this from a lot of people, right? Like I always end up in the same spot. I just always come back to this issue, this problem, this whatever. And it's like, okay, well, you spent a lot of time feeling that. You literally have been in the trenches with that feeling for years. So if feeling it to healing it worked, you'd be cured already. You would literally never revisit this again. But
right.
it doesn't work. And I want to say too, kind of back to the people give up too soon thing, they abort too soon. That I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and we were talking about freely receive and all the concepts behind it, and she was just like, okay, but like what if you have a really great experience with something and then you come back to a place where, oh no, this thing just blew wide open again? I said, that's your personality trying to cling to the known, because you're asking yourself to step into the unknown, into unknown territory. With this person, it was relationships, specific relationships in particular. I'm like, in all of your years on this planet, you have never had the relationship that you want with this person. I said, and you created that, you know what I mean, in your new reality, your new mental landscape. I said, and you're asking yourself to kind of jump into the unknown with that. And your personality is terrified. It doesn't want to jump into the unknown. It wants to go right back to the familiar way you have always gotten along with these people in your life. It wants you back in that hole, because that hole is known. And I think that's a huge thing, is that so many people think, well, I don't want to be in this hole. I don't want to be in this hole. I don't want to be in this hole. But when your personality has a choice between being in the hole that it knows or the big, wide unknown that it doesn't, it's picking the hole. Every time it's picking the hole. And so if you want out of that hole, you have to recognize your personality is probably going to go kicking and screaming, and understand that that can look like a big old mess in the 3D world sometimes, right? That's why I love to say, well, not my reality. Because then in my reality, I already have my eyes back on the prize, back on the thing that I have chosen for myself. So when I say not in my reality, I mean literally not in the reality I have chosen for myself. That
Definitely.
means what's showing up in the 3D, because an old version of me was real committed to this outcome, to this reality, but not anymore. And now I know that the new thing is coming.
Right.
You know the new thing is coming.
The thing that's so powerful about what you're saying, in my perspective, Shannon, is um, what you're really doing in that moment is you're consciously tuning in to the reality that you're choosing. Like you're constantly tuning your station there. When you're like, not in my reality, oh, turn the dial. The dial was getting a little wonky. There was a little bit of static coming through. We're going back to the clear channel again. And that's what all this is about, right? I mean, even in the deconstructing and the reconstructing inside of Freely Receive, it's like, it's just about you figuring out that this channel has already existed and always exists for you. And you can tune into it anytime you want. So yes, that old channel is real easy to slip into on that dial, right? It's well worn, or you punched it in and you got that preset. That's right. You got the preset, but you can change the preset. And that's what that is about. It's about changing that preset, being like, no, this is the only place I'm tuned into, this frequency, this information, this story. And over time of rehearsing that frequency and tuning the dial and getting more and more accurate to it, the old station literally goes bankrupt. It literally doesn't exist. They have to close up shop. right? Everybody gets fired. That DJ isn't even on the radio anymore because ain't nobody paying the bills,
Right.
you know? And so that's what all this is about. And making those changes are not as challenging as we think. It's just that so many people quit too soon or they lack the discipline to just see it through until it becomes their new normal.
Yeah, that's it.
Anything else that you want to say that you feel like is valid about feelings, old feelings coming up, or how people handle that?
Yeah, I mean, just for me, just to really get to the point, like I think what I'll tell myself sometimes if I get in a space where I notice that I'm really tuning into an old frequency, tuning into an old potential, an old reality for myself. Um, I just I asked the old Dr. Phil question, okay, and how's that working for you? Right? Like you want to tune into this. This is what you're feeling right now, and you want to be so immersed in the feeling of this thing or whatever. Okay, how's that working for you? You know? And then it's like, oh yeah, no, this sucks actually. Okay, cool. What doesn't suck? What doesn't suck? What doesn't suck is that thing that I chose for myself and my life and my future. You know, that desire that came from God, that God put into my heart. Yeah, I can just refocus there. I can just refocus on that. And that is a feeling that I can get behind. So if we're going to talk feelings, and they're all made up anyway, you know what I mean? Just they're all made up based off of stories and beliefs and experiences and a million different things. I might as well go to the made up ones that I enjoy, the made up ones that are working for me, as opposed to the ones that are, making me work, not in a good way.
I love that. It's so valuable. I listened to a guy earlier today. He was saying, let's say someone came and handed you a check for $1 million. And you, in all of your excitement, you go to the bank, you take the check to the bank, they take the check and they're like, great, we're going to deposit it. It's going to take about 7 days to clear your account. They're going to do their due diligence, make sure it's legitimate and all that stuff before they release the funds. 7 to 10 days, whatever they say. You're like, all right, cool. You leave the bank. When you leave the bank for the next 10 days, you're completely elated. Like, tell me you're not, you know? You're literally so excited and so relaxed because that money is sitting in the bank. And all you're doing is just waiting for it to clear, right? Waiting for it to be released, the funds to be released so that you can use them. But you're not sitting there going, I wonder if I'll ever get $1 million. So at this point, that's not the thing. At this point, you're like, I have it. It's there. I'm just waiting for it to clear. So the energy that you activate in your life, more than likely, from the moment that that check gets deposited until those funds are released, is energy of just so much excitement, so much joy, so much relaxation and ease and fun. So much fun in your brain about what you're going to do and how you're going to enjoy this. And oh my gosh. Now, that's the feeling, that's the emotion, that's the energy we want to be giving ourselves to over and over and over again, right? And it wasn't that, I mean, it is that circumstance. People will wait for a circumstance to pop up to allow themselves to have the feeling that they'd rather have anyway. And this is the part where it's like what you just said. Well, why don't I just go ahead and just use the made up feeling right now? Why don't I just tune into that right now instead of dealing with this old nonsense that hasn't gotten me anywhere and it really hasn't worked for me at all? Why don't I just give myself permission to go ahead and have this other feeling that I would have if these circumstantial things lined up in my life? I wait for the circumstance. Let's just go ahead and have the feeling now. Often what I would tell people, be like, well, I know that if this happened, I would just feel so good. I'm like, why don't you just have it now?
Right.
Why don't you just have it?
Yeah. Sit in the energy of the answered prayer instead of the prayer request.
Boom.
You
That's it.
already made the prayer request. You already did that part. Don't stay there. Don't sit there. Sit in the energy of the answer.
Right. and practice it over and 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 over again, and tune back into that station over and over and over and over again. And before you know it, you're going to feel so different about yourself and the world around you that suddenly those things are going to show up in your life and you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's no big deal. You know what? I've been practicing having that for so long that it just feels like old hat at this point, you know? So good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here and tune in with everybody else to the next conversation.